Here are our millennials, the people who will save us all. But wow, check out Japan and Germany. These are countries that have terminal demographic structures in the 80s. The German economic model was always going to collapse this decade. It was always going to happen. They were just going to look at the people. The Ukraine war is simply speeding it up. And check out China. That is the world's fastest aging worker base already. Faster than what happened during the Black Death. Faster aging. And we now know that that data is wrong. The Chinese are now admitting publicly, begrudgingly, that they overcounted their population by in excess of 100 million people. And all the missing millions would have been born since the one-child policy was adopted 20 years ago, meaning that the missing millions are all aged 40 and under. And that suggests that these yellow bars don't even exist. This is not a country in demographic decline. This is a country in the advanced stages of full national collapse. We do not have an economic theory as a species for what would make this work in the year 2030. They're almost gone, folks. Don't count China anything. Okay. Oh my God, thank God. Mexico is the healthiest demography, not just in the rich world, but in the advanced developing world. It's better than Brazil, it's better than Turkey, rated in Asia. And courtesy of Donald Trump, we're bolted together at the hip because of that too. There are a lot of things about Trump I was not a fan of, in case that didn't shine through. NAFTA 2 was done brilliantly, and the hard work's behind us. It's already operationalized, it's already implemented, it's already ratified, and it's already showing up in the data. Here's some labor costs. These are a number of Southeast Asian countries that I think very fondly of. I think they're going to do very well in the world to come. Here are our Mexican partners right in the middle, very competitive, and here are the Chinese. If the preliminary data for this year proves true, and I think it will, by the end of this calendar year, Chinese labor on average will cost 3 times that of Mexican labor, but the Mexican laborer will have a better skill set. You get an idea of just how much better. This is an export. This is proving in data. Everything on the left is what Peru exports, primarily raw commodities. Everything on the right is where they go, primarily East Asia. This is right middle of the road for the developing world and for Latin American specific, very average. This is what we consider to be manufactured goods. It's 3% of the total export portfolio. Again, middle of the road. Here's Mexico. You compare the value of the product that comes out to the value of the inputs that go in. Mexico is the most highly value-added economy on the planet. They have a larger work base with a better skill set and better industrial implant than the entirety of Central Europe. And they're our partners. They are a trading partner. That is a position they are unlikely to give up in our lives. All right, let's talk manufacturing. I'm going to go way over. I'm so sorry. I love a good matrix. So if you're at the bottom of this, you are looking at the supply chain that'll fit on the back of a cocktail napkin. If you're on the top, you probably need a staff of 20, and you're going to break Excel and keep track of things. If you're on the left, most things today are based on the Chinese system. If you're on the right, it's already done within NAFTA. So a couple of examples. First, energy. American production, American workers, American finance, American steel, American pipes, American downstream, American processing, and primarily American consumption. Pretty straightforward. Oh my God, the smartphone. The iPhone has 1,400 parts, each with their own supply chain network. 91% of those supply chain networks touch China in some way. This is the last iPhone, folks. You probably want to buy 2. It's going to take you 5 years to relocate your supply chain somewhere else. I know that the iPhone 14 is not that, but if you want an Apple, you're running out of time. I get mine Tuesday. Here's everyone else. I'm going to go through a few of these. Chemicals. The United States is the world's largest producer of nitrogen-type fertilizers. It comes from natural gas. We have no reason to expect that that's going to do anything but grow in the years to come. We're fine. So your baseline for materials is probably okay. There we go. Anything that moves on a wheel. Now, there's a clause within NAFTA 2 that says about 80% of all the components that go into any vehicle sold within North America have to be made in North America. And the American big 3 automakers are already above that threshold, and the Asian ones are rapidly catching up. The Europeans have a ways to go, so there's going to be some consolidation in the space. You want to play in automotive? You've got an opportunity for some network guys here. Heavy vehicles are a problem. It's farm equipment, construction equipment, and so on. All the big manufacturers of heavy vehicles were like, oh, well, Trump's an asshat and he's going to be gone soon. So let's just ignore it, pay the tariffs, And then when he's gone, we'll just go back to how we were doing and building most of this stuff in China. Biden made it very clear less than a month into his job that nope, we're keeping every single trade policy that Donald Trump gave us. We're just gonna put it through a really good grammar checker. And there's a scramble now to bring all this stuff back as quickly as possible. That's now doubled and tripled because of what's going on in China and Germany. There's a very real risk here that we won't have a lot of the equipment that we need for the next 2 to 3 years as this works itself out, AKA another opportunity. Semis, low end, medium quality, high end. The high end, we make 57% of all semiconductors by value. And we are buttressed by Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. The mid quality, things that go into like aerospace and automotive, that is primarily Thailand, that is primarily Malaysia. That's where our shortage is. The low end, the Internet of Things, your singing popcorn machine, that's exclusively made in China. That's the stuff that's going away. The problem is that the 20% of the global neon that doesn't come from Ukraine and Russia, it comes from China. So there's a risk here that the only chips we're going to be able to get a year from now are the ones that I would argue we don't really need. And the technical term for this sort of disconnect between supply and demand and security issues is, now you'll notice I've highlighted electronics. With the Chinese going away, a lot of the electronics manufacturing in the United States, a lot of the electronics manufacturing in the wider world has to come here if we want it. The problem is to make manufacturing work, you need different qualities of labor. And that means you need high end for the software and medium quality for the wiring and lower quality for like the die cast. The only place in North America we have that kind of mix is on the border zone. So we need to add 2 million jobs in electronics manufacturing. That's not where I think you guys can play, but I do think you can play here. Because once you get a raw semiconductor, it still needs to be built into a wiring harness or a control board or flash drive. That's high-end work that still requires eyes and fingers. And since you are representatives of the most overeducated population on the planet, if you want to get into value-added manufacturing, I would get into something where the end product is typically flown because you're not able to achieve economies of scale for mass manufacturing. But oh, howdy, you can do the high end. And if you can do things where the product can be flown, you really need to take a fun look at aerospace. Because as Airbus dies, we're not going to suddenly stop using jets. And you're looking at half of the world's supply chain in space needs to find a new home. It's not all going to fit in Seattle, Matamoros, and Charleston. And again, the parts are literally flown because it's a plane.